We are going to be talking about data, how best to leverage data for success. I think we said in 2024, but hopefully beyond 2024 as well. My name is Rachel Aldighieri. I'm the Managing Director of the DMA. Obviously at the DMA, we're very focused on leveraging data for growth. We have a clear customer-first ethos, which comes to life in our code. And that really is with the hope of driving trust and marketing effectiveness, which we feel is so important for growth with data. I am joined by some wonderful marketing leaders, so really looking forward to this conversation. I wondered if you each want to kick off, just introduce yourselves, your role, and talk very briefly about how data impacts your role. So should we kick off, Shane, with you?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess we'll go down the line. So I'm Shane O'Rourke. I'm the head of performance marketing for Diageo. I've been in the digital media space for over a decade now, and for my sins, I've worked with some of the bigger CPG players like Diageo, where I am now, Nestle, and Reckitt. Suppose we can do intros, and I'll come back to talk around how we use data, making sure I get the topic right, in Diageo.
Perfect. Hi everyone, I'm Emma. I'm a Senior Growth Manager at Gousto, one of the leading recipe boxes in the UK. We also describe ourselves as a data company that loves food. At Gousto, I look after our CRM strategy, so really using data to be able to unlock new products, algorithmic improvements, and personalised campaigns as well. And I'll do my best. I'll try and keep all the food puns to a minimum during the session as well.
Hello everyone, I'm Nicola Smedley. I'm Director of Marketing and Supporter Engagement at Cancer Research UK. Just 20 seconds on cancer research. So we're a research organisation primarily funded by the Great British Public. We spend about 400 million a year in research against beating cancer. My role is quite significantly now changing the way in which we do our marketing, using data and digital differently. We're undertaking a massive transformation and investment program around key tools to help us learn more and be more audience focused. So keen to get into that with you all.
Great. Thank you. So we're going to chat probably for about 30 minutes, and then we'd love to have questions from the floor. So as we're chatting, please do think of some great questions for our panelists. Nothing too hard, though. It's still early in the day. So Emma, I'd quite like to start with you. You refer to Gousto as a data company first, and you love food, obviously, and do a lot with food. But how does that really impact how your approach to data? What does that look like? Can you talk to us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So obviously we position ourselves as a data company that loves food, and what that means is that we take a data-centric approach to enhance decision-making across the entire customer journey. So first of all, we can customize experiences, we refine meal selections, we forecast trends, and then also use data to power recommendation engines so we can tailor all of the meal options for our customers. We also then utilize data to improve our operational efficiency, so streamlining inventory management, demand forecasting, and also minimizing waste, so creating a more sustainable business, which is really at the core of Gousto. But I think lastly, and for any kind of CRM dream really, it's data fuels our innovation, so allows us to perfect our recipes, refine our communications, and then we're then able to optimize everything from discounts all the way to content to be able to create meaningful moments for all of our customers.
Great. Does any of that resonate in terms of your approaches at the moment?
Yeah, for sure. In Diageo, it's very similar. We're using data a lot to fuel our AI capabilities. I'm glad we're the first session because I'm sure AI is going to be a buzzword for today, so I'm glad I got in there first. But I suppose we're using AI for three big things at Diageo. One is for content creation, to reduce our content create costs versus traditional methods. And just for example, we're now producing a lot of our e-commerce content, our product detail pages with AI versus using copywriters and graphic designers like we used to do in the past. Also similar, we're using AI to reduce a lot of our repetitive tasks. So we have our own ChatGPT internally as well, which I'm sure a lot of you do with your businesses as well to make sure there's a safety element to it. And then the third is to gather more market insights quicker and more effectively. I'm not going to lie, I have popped in the odd market research report into our ChatGPT and asked to summarize it for me. And I suppose a bit different from Gousto, Diageo isn't a tech company first, but what we really do is find the right partners to build up that infrastructure. And I think, for example, who's been really key in creating our content AI bank is Oliver, who's our creative agency, who's been fantastic along the way.
Great. We'd like to be where Diageo and Gousto are, but we're definitely not yet. I think what we're spending time on at the moment is trying to think about how we personalize more of our experiences based on the data we do have. So we're a big information provider as well as a big fundraising organization. So we provide information to about 30 million people via our website every year. So the opportunity to understand more about our audience is definitely there, but what we don't do today is use any of that data in the way that we become more relevant for that person. Maybe they're, excuse me, they're coming into the website because they're interested in understanding their breast cancer experience, and at the moment we don't tailor what we share with that person based on the topic of breast cancer. We kind of serve up, everything to everybody. So there's massive opportunity for us to be much more tailored to improve the services we provide, but also to think about how those people, when they're in some sort of experience with cancer, often people want to do something to help, do something to give back. And again, we don't connect the two sources at the moment with who's looking at our information and who might then want to do something to support us in the future. So the opportunity for us is massive, and we're very much on the early start of our journey, a bit similar to Shane. We're thinking about not building stuff ourselves, but working with our partners. Like I said before, we're investing massively. We've just made a choice about a CRM. We've made a choice about a new CMS. So making all the right investments, but just haven't made it all real to impact our audiences yet. So I'd say this time in a year's time, we'll hopefully be getting all of this to be real and experience the audiences that...
We'll have to rerun the panel next year and see where we're at.
Oh, no pressure.
Yeah, exactly. A year to make it all happen. Yeah, that's really interesting, though, in terms of where you're coming at it from, that engagement and acquisition point. In terms of collecting data to help you do that, it's really interesting, and whether less is more or more is indeed more, and how you build in those data points. How are you currently approaching that? What data points are you using? What are the most valuable, and how's that driving engagement? Don't know who wants.
I'm happy to go first. So for Diageo, I guess I'll speak to how we're trying to acquire new customer data points, and we ultimately have two routes we're going about that. One is through our D2C, our D2C business. I'm not sure if many of you know, but we actually have our own D2C business, which is called thebar.com and malts.com. And the second route is actually working with our retail partners, because a lot of them now are monetizing their customer data. And for example, we just started work with Tesco to purchase their data. Of course, it's all anonymized, etc. But what I'd recommend there is really being close with your retailers and having that great relationship with their retail media arms to make sure you are first of mind when they do start offering different solutions like monetizing their data, etc. is really important there.
Yeah, I think for us as well, we've had a bit of a shift in thinking about both qualitative and quantitative data to be able to collect for our customers. So whilst you can collect data based on their actions, so with Gousto, it's around kind of what recipes they've chosen, dietary preferences, their order history, etc. It's also about making or giving opportunities to have a lot of customer feedback. I think that's really central to our approach at Gousto. We have lots of different feedback routes, user research. We pretty much test everything that we launch to customers through user research panels, so we can get first-hand feedback from our users to be able to then create an experience that actually resonates with them, and it's in line with their customer expectations as well.
Oh, fantastic. Nicola?
And I'd say we have plans to be able to do much of that, but today we're very much transactional. So everything we collect is pretty much all our transactional data. We're investing in creating a single data platform that allows us to share that across our multiple touch points. We're not there yet. The next bit for us is, understanding how behavioral data can enrich those journeys, and really make sure we're personalised in the way we want to be, to consider how people are coming into the charity, specific cancer types, specific areas where they may be interested in helping more, or that are relevant to them. Maybe it's an early diagnosis phase of a treatment, or maybe it's post-treatment, to bring all that together in one way.
Yeah, you mentioned behavioural data. I don't know, in terms of using that, I don't know, Diageo, how you currently
I think what I'll speak to here about is, again, working with our customers in different ways. And I guess what I'm touching on is that retail media wave, and I'm sure that's going to be talked a lot about today here. But for us at Diageo, we think of retail media a little bit differently. It's not just an advertising vertical for us. It's really a way for us to enable that through-the-line marketing for real. For instance, by investing with our retailers, we get more data back from a performance perspective and an insight perspective. And with that data, we're really able to execute that omni-channel marketing approach, so it's not just lip service, and ultimately that should drive more sales as well. I think a few of the key retailers who are leading the way there are obviously Amazon and Tesco, but a lot more customers are, what we call customers, are jumping on that retail media train. And even in the hospitality industry, big players like Green King and Stonegate are accelerating their retail media ecosystems really, really fast.
Yeah. How about Gousto?
Yeah, so behavioural data really is key for understanding how our customers interact with our platform, so both across app, across website, within our product and our menu, so allows us to really create dynamic content personalisation. So we're able to suggest recipes and content in real time based on their browsing behaviour. Also allows us to be able to track and improve our UX experience, so we're able to analyse a lot of user flows, able to identify friction points within our journeys, so any drop-offs during onboarding or resubscribing, for example. Also, we can make that process a lot smoother for customers and get them to that end state goal or conversion. I'd say probably one of the biggest things that we've been focusing on recently at Gousto is around how we use our data science resource. So we're lucky enough to have data science teams within house who can help us build algorithms based on both behavioral data and also first-party data. So we have data science algorithms, which is filled with around 120 different data attributes, and that decides what discounts we give customers, decides what channel, and then also the content as well. So not only increases our retention overall and our engagement, but also our cost efficiency. So channel, media spend, and then also obviously discount spend when we're launching a lot of promotions as a business.
So a very clear measurement framework sitting behind that. That's really interesting. And in terms of how then you're conveying that, obviously, one of the challenges we're seeing in industry at the moment is that real empowerment of the marketeer and showcasing the value of data and how it's being used, and putting you on an equal level playing field with the CFO around that board table. So are you finding, in terms of, obviously you're a data first company, so it's maybe slightly different, but are you finding that you're getting more traction to be able to showcase the value then, having all that insight?
100%. I think we've gone on a massive journey. I think specifically speaking in the CRM space. When I joined Gousto, we were a team of pretty much one at that point, and we've been able to grow that to a team of like 5 to 8 people now. And I think it's all about showing a value of CRM and how it can be fueled by data, how it can be fueled by product teams as well, and showing a collaboration across Gousto to be able to like build those data points to back it. So at the end of the day, data doesn't fail. So we've been on a massive journey, but I think recently we started to be able to kind of show that value within Gousto itself.
Yeah. And Nicola, you're obviously earlier on in this journey, but personalisation and using that has been around a little while, but there's often, I guess, striking that balance in terms of over-personalisation whereby people get a bit freaked out to making things super relevant. Is that something that you either got as part of your plan or something you considered previously?
Yeah, definitely. So we're writing our data strategy at the moment. That includes, I suppose, a principle of never being intrusive, but always being helpful, regardless of, entry point into the organization. So even if it's, I don't know, you've done a race for life for us, we know nothing about you, but you've just gone and got sponsorship to run Race for Life. Actually, what's the helpful thing? What do we know about you enough to get you more engaged in the charity so you know where to help longer term? So I'd say the data strategy needs to control the governance, needs to control the frequency. Our CEO specifically is really onto frequency and intrusive nature of making sure we're where we should be in the right in the right way. So that's all incorporated into the work we're doing around our data strategy now.
Right.
That's a bit similar to Diageo. Like, we're also working on frequency and work with our different media agencies to track that. But the biggest hurdle we have is advertising our products safely and making sure they're appearing to people who are over LPA, which is legal purchasing age in our language. And for example, we've only just in the last few weeks gone live with TikTok, who's obviously been massive for years, but we've only just set up our first account with Seedlip, which is a non-alc brand. And the reason why I'm personally passionate about social commerce and live shopping is because it's really perfect for those products that need demonstrating, and for us that's obviously cocktail making, for example. And I think that whole live shopping, going back to TV shopping years ago, is just going to get bigger and bigger, like it is in Asia, and I think the UK and the US are going to follow suit eventually.
Yeah, and then in terms of Gousto and avoiding over-targeting, do you have a strategy to do that?
Yeah, so we launch a couple of different initiatives at Gousto to be able to tackle that. So I think firstly, within the comm space, we implement a lot of frequency capping, so we can limit the amount of marketing messages that customers are receiving on a given day, for example. But I think one layer deeper than that is that we really focus on data segmentation, so making sure that when we send meaningful communications like tailored discounts or promotions, we're only sending that to customers that have a high likelihood of conversion. And we also use next best action methodology to be able to send customers down a path that makes sense and makes sense to our end state goals. So it means that we prioritize that relevance over volume. But I think recently, which I think has been one of the most significant changes that we've done, is focus on channel preferences. So using our engagement data or past engagement data with different channels and communications means that we can use predictive modeling to be able to send content on a channel that customers are more likely to engage with. So it means that we're maintaining that trust and engagement, we're not overwhelming customers, and again, it then increases our efficiency with channel spend. So we're only utilizing kind of paid media channels or kind of direct mail only when customers are likely to convert or have engaged in the past as well.
Yeah, so really led by those customer first principles. Yeah, that's really interesting. Is that similar? Obviously, you described that kind of governance, but where obviously customer is a slightly strange word in a way to use for charities, isn't it? So, you know, how do you ensure you're putting the right person at the centre of all of that? I guess in terms of you obviously are targeting people to raise funds, but you've also, you know, having to speak to people in a slightly different way when you're supporting them going through a very difficult time. How do you ensure that it's always customer-centric?
Yeah, and I think it's a good thing to have on your shoulder as a director of marketing. How are you making sure you appeal to the right audiences at the right time? I think for us, we're doing a lot through the paid media agency. So we use Essence Mediacom for all our paid activity, but you know, we are focused on what levels of personalization we can get to with the paid. So we're doing things like regional targeting for regional event delivery, all of the things we can do. We are managing through the agency relationships we've got, but that core infrastructure that allows us to control it better in the future is not there yet. So that's the shift we need to make, is investment in that, making sure it's working, and then our processes become a lot more streamlined, our efficiency drives a lot better, and we're really clear on where channels are working for us. You know, we're a hugely successful marketing machine, I would say, given the constraints we've got, but just making all of this live will really shift where we are today. We do lots of things that probably not, you know, you're maybe not aware of them as members of the general public, like we're running a campaign in Northern Ireland for the NHS, purely focused on C2D audiences, people that are massively affected by cancer in a way that gives them lower survival rates than the general population. So there is key things that we're doing that allow us to target where they are, that specific audience around specific areas of our work. But again, the route to do that is through all of our paid advertising at the moment.
Okay, interesting. And then Shane, in terms of, there's a lot of talk at the moment about using data in an ethical way. So you're kind of furthering your ethical principles, impact on society. At the end of the day, you've got to sell a product. You're selling drinks. How do you strike that balance between profitability and responsibility? And obviously, you have constraints within the industry, that the rules that you mentioned. But how do you balance those two? What's the ethos at Diageo?
Yeah, for sure. So not to take up too much time in it, but Diageo is committed and does support and does invest behind DEI. I say that because I chair the LGBTQ+ employee resource group at the business, and we are committed to it. We do have a long way to go, but we are very much behind it. I think I wanted to take this opportunity to highlight two great organizations that we've worked with to elevate our DE&I capabilities, and one is Multiverse. If you've not heard of Multiverse before, they're ultimately an organization that helps your business see where they have digital skills gaps, and then helps you take advantage of the government's or HMRC apprenticeship levy to fill that gap with talent that is representative and from all walks of life. And the second organization I wanted to really shed a light on is Out in Tech. Out in Tech create mentoring opportunities and also networking opportunities for LGBTQ+ individuals. And over the last year, we put on events with the likes of TikTok, Google, Bloomberg, and yes, Diageo. And really, these are two great organizations. And if you wanted to learn more about them, feel free to drop me a line on LinkedIn or, as they say on Love Island, grab me for a chat after this.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that brings us on to a point about people. As I mentioned earlier, we have the DMA code, and that's been very much always focused on data governance, so being transparent with the way you use data, essentially responsible use of data. But we realised a really important part of that responsibility is indeed people. So we're shortly going to be introducing a people principle, and that principle is going to be very much focused on DEI, and that's in the when you look at it in the context of data and marketing, looking at how DEI drives authentic representation and creativity, but also looking at how we can start to consider ridding algorithms of bias, for instance. So really looking at the impact DEI has there, but then also looking at skills. I think within the data sector, skills are still lacking, and that's sometimes where we're perhaps feeling inferior, not inferior, but feeling inferior at that boardroom table in terms of really professionalizing the industry and make it much more skills driven. So having the principle that really focuses our members on how they can build their teams. And I think really showcasing the value of people in driving a customer-first approach. And I've got a few members of the team here, actually. So afterwards, if you want to chat to about what we're doing at the DMA, Matt's here, and Gershon and Yetmir. So do come and have a chat with them. But I think just in terms of people and how we can innovate using our teams, obviously at Gousto, you've talked about a data-first company, so I can imagine you've already focused very heavily on building that data culture with your people. Can you perhaps talk a bit more how you do that, how you go from perhaps not having that focus to really building it and it being the be-all and end-all, I guess, is at Gousto?
Yeah, of course. So I think definitely from like a people perspective, I'd say one of the main points that we're using to be able to kind of innovate from that perspective is looking at upskilling. So we have multiple different data literacy programs across the business. We have multiple workshops and programs where every single employee, this is what we aim to do, is they feel empowered to be able to make data-driven decisions on their own. And we also have been focusing on more so like automation and AI. I know kind of Shane, you mentioned it earlier, but using it to our advantage. So rather than kind of using automation and AI within our data, it's about how do we free up our team's time to work on more strategic and maybe creative work as well. But I think one of like our key ingredients to success, and I promise that's the only pun I'll make, but it's definitely around our cross-collaboration, which is really at the core of one of our principles at Gousto. We work in a tribe model. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that kind of structure, but it's an extremely agile way of working. So it means that teams such as product, tech, data, marketing, all work towards one North Star metric, which in our case is about driving deep customer engagement and retention, and then making sure that we then have the tech, the tools and the teams to power this. And I think this is really key to making sure that data is shared effectively and also responsibly within the business as well.
No, absolutely. And that measurement, the kind of accountability behind and showcasing the value and how, I think that's a real motivator, I think, for the teams. Nicola, obviously, again, I keep, going back, you are in the process of kind of almost, you've kick-started that kind of move to a data culture and you're bringing on a data director. How do you see that working, in conjunction with the other teams and really, ensuring that it's, I guess, adopted cross-team within the organisation?
Yeah, I think we're heavily focused on what's the future measurement model for our organisation. So in the way you just described then about where Gousto are, I think just being able to give teams, no matter what, clear visibility of performance of their work, and that sort of is central to the way in which we then enable them to make the right decisions. Very similarly, we're thinking about how we set up our product towers to work in a very agile way, taking in data sources and then adapting. We're really quite reactive on, it's not really real-time shifts and optimizations that we're making. So I think we see the measurement system as a really big focus, and again, our data director will take that as a big first objective. They start on the 1st of October. So this is all stuff we're shifting on now, but the measurement system at the heart of it all.
The measurement, it does seem to be a really hot topic at the moment in terms of moving from where we've traditionally been and measuring likes and visits and really moving from those marketing metrics, I guess, to business metrics to really showcase the power of what we're doing. How's that working from, as a data-driven initiative at Diageo?
I suppose similar to what you were saying in terms of working as a tribe and finding our North Star, one question we always get from more of a senior level, I would say, is what channel is going to work best for us? But I think for us, we're trying to find what's the best mix. And not just using marketing mix models that we get research back every year, but trying to find something a bit more real time, a bit more embedded in AI to give us that mix back based on what we need to do now, and really understanding how everything works together to reach that North Star, like what you were saying. See, I was listening.
And just to wrap up before we take some questions, you talked at the very beginning about AI. Which obviously everyone's talking about. Be great to, not necessarily, well, if you can talk to how you're currently using it, great, but I think it'd be really good to get your views on how you feel it's going to impact our use of data. We're talking about using data better today to leverage growth. Is AI going to help us do that, or do you think it potentially could overcomplicate, we could get too much data, and we get ourselves in a bit of a pickle? It'd be good to just get your views on that.
I can go. I know it sounds simple, but the biggest thing that AI is going to change for us is that content creation piece. All the teams are spending so much time dealing with different ways to create the content, which can take weeks to come back, revisions. And imagine just having a tool where you can say, change this, change that, and getting your perfect content that's plugged into all of your asset management hubs. And for example, at Diageo, we're working with Oliver, who's our creative partner, like I mentioned, with a technology that's called Pencil AI, which is very much that tool where you can ask it to produce different types of content, and it's plugged into your content hub, and it comes back to you with that. And yes, it still takes a person to manage it. That's why it's called Pencil. It's still a hand needed there, but it really is going to take away a huge amount of time and a huge amount of cost as well. And I see that as an immediate game changer for our business.
Oh,
we're in the same boat. So all of our pilots on AI are to do with the creative process. We've got quite a large creative internal team, so like 40 plus people. And we see that just being able to look at amends, sizing, basic things around creative delivery, just speeding up what the team can be across, like you say, human oversight across the system. But just how you make that real. So our pilots are sort of now roughly using the tools. I think there's something as well with the big players are all adding AI capability, like Salesforce, I think, did something this week where they advertised a big thing they were doing on AI additions to their CRM. I think we use Adobe for some of our marketing automation today. They've all got components of AI delivery within their sort of suite, and I think for us it's about how we take advantage of those capabilities as they come online.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's probably quite similar about like taking advantage of those capabilities. I think for us at Gousto, we mostly use AI to be able to, I guess, use it as a superpower or to be able to use data interpretation. So like I mentioned, around having all levels of teams and employees to be able to have the powers and the tools to do quite in-depth data interpretation and being able to create these models, and that wouldn't really be possible without AI and automation. But I think touching on your kind of, I guess, the point around, is it too overcomplicating businesses? And I think for us, like, we haven't really fed that into comms as much because we take such a customer-centric approach to our decision making that listening to your customers, I think, is super key over AI. So being able to change and adapt your product in line with your customers' changing needs. At Gousto, especially, like going through the different dips that we've had, like post-COVID, cost of living crisis, like your customers' mindsets are completely different to where they were maybe a year or 6 months ago. So making sure that you're constantly in line with like how they're feeding back or how they interpret the product, just so we can keep in line and like retain them more.
Interesting. Thank you so much. Over to you now, actually. So, does anyone have any questions for our panel? Over there. I think we've got a mic. Yes, we do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was really interesting. I'm keen to understand a bit more about the internal cultural change that's required to move from a spreadsheets, paper, into a more kind of matured data environment, and get people to understand within a business that some marketing metrics are actually business metrics and bring those into play.
I can speak to it, for example. I think for us, one of the biggest thing has been connecting our marketing, I hope this answers your question, connecting our marketing metrics right down our P&L. We have a system internally called Neo, which tracks all of our P&L across all of our customers, you name it in terms of financial metric, it has it, but we've not yet got there in terms of plugging our marketing metrics into it so we can see what the real impact is on the bottom line and what's driving incrementality growth. And I think, like I was talking about retail media, and that's those self-serve portals, those are what's the most easy to plug into those. But in terms of those more traditional channels like TV, out of home, plugging those into your P&L and seeing the immediate impact on that and the incremental benefit from that is still very much a challenge we're trying to get to.
Yeah, I think for us, like a big shift within that, especially around like the business KPIs, is when we linked marketing really closely with trading. So integrating that within our core marketing teams to be able to see exactly what our marketing comms are driving based on kind of revenue, whether it's like incremental NLTV, for example, and making sure that each comm that we do, whether it's an A/B test or whether it's a big campaign launch, directly correlates into the business KPIs.
Yeah. I think for me, just on the people side of things, we've got quite a large marketing department with people that are sort of multi-skilled, but they generally have sort of one or two specialisms. I think what we're doing is spending time to really showcase where teams can evolve their thinking to be a bit more data-centric. So don't show me the campaign you've launched without all the thinking about how you're going to measure its effectiveness and what are your early learnings from making that live. So I think often it's in the leadership quizzing of how those things are working to make sure people have got real data thinking embedded in how they're approaching their job. Like I say to our creative team all the time, don't just show me the creative. I want to see, if you're showing me good creative because you think it's brilliant, show me the metrics that come in with it. So that often means them talking to another person, but just really asking the right questions. I think I'm really lucky that at a top line scorecard level, even for our CEO, we share our return on marketing investment and our return on ad spend, So if you put that in your top line scorecard, they then want to drill down occasionally into, well, what's making that up and how are you spending your money? What channels are performing? So I think just having that at the top line level in the business really helps drive the right questioning.
Yeah, it's a really interesting scenario we're really focused on at the moment, and we recently launched our Value of Measurement report, and that's using our data bank of awards entries. So we go through all our awards entries, and we've got years and years now to look at all the measurement touch points. And there's something like, Matt's going to correct me here, 150 too many measurement points, basically. There's vast amounts, there's no consistency, and it becomes apparent when you're judging the awards as well, that what people are seeing as what good looks like versus business effects and tying things together. So really trying to help the industry with measurement frameworks to kind of align more with that business metric. But yeah, have a look at that, because there'll be a few pointers in there. Any other questions? Over there.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. So I'm curious about, in terms of customer acquisition, how do you feed first-party data in terms of Google ads, Facebook ads, TikTok ads campaigns? And I assume, at least in case of Diageo, the majority of the sales occur offline. Do you stitch the offline data, so the offline sales data, with the online ad platforms?
So is the question, just from my own clarity, is the question how we combine the offline and the online data to understand the impact? And
how do you do that? And in terms of tech stack, what kind of platforms do you use?
Yeah. One thing we're using, we obviously have our marketing mix studies, which we work with Gain Theory on, is the agency, and we get those back every 6 months and a year, which has both online and offline metrics. In terms of more real time, we have our own internal built dashboards that has, like I mentioned, the paid search or the paid display, that we have a self-serve dashboard, or like from Citrus, from Criteo, from Amazon Ads, etc., that we plug in, which has our online P&L. So I suppose there's two versions of it. If there is a platform where we get the data back straight away, we're able to create a single source of truth with our P&L, but for the offline advertising, a bit similar to the previous question, we're kind of relying on our marketing mix studies so far, but we do have an ambition to try bring it all together. I hope that makes sense. I don't know if there's any 2 cents from you guys in terms of your marketing mix and how you go about it.
Yeah, I think I can just talk about how we essentially retarget through paid media and paid social. So we're lucky enough to have a lot of internal databases and platforms, but we use our CRM system, which is Braze. We integrate mostly all of our data points into the platform, so we have a single customer view of our users. This not only powers retention efforts, but I think also we're able to create a lot of social audience sync, so sending high-value customers into Facebook, into our ads, into our Google audiences, that then we can use for either retargeting or we can use for acquiring lookalike customers as well.
Right. Yeah, similar. We, with our investment in our CRM, essentially are thinking about offline sources. We have quite an omni-channel way of doing our work today, so people who are towards the upper ends of sort of higher value volunteers are often managed over the phone with like an account manager type of resource, and we do have essentially the equivalent of a field sales team who engage supporters across the UK. So we're often thinking about how we connect all of it together to have the right conversations at the right time, whether through media or through face-to-face conversations. But again, I think we see the CRM replacement as the catalyst for getting that working better.
That's interesting. You all touched on tech because I guess as an enabler, do you feel there's any kind of, I guess, barriers that sometimes come up with getting the next shiny new thing? And I think that, we were talking about this in our customer engagement committee recently with various brands, how I think everyone's quick to jump on the next kind of shiny tech. And then sometimes that becomes problematic in terms of how you join things up. How do you kind of not control it, but have a view on how things, you've talking about the CRM being the central point and that driving, are there any other ways that we can manage our tech effectively to make better use of data?
So internally, I'm sure a lot of us here get bombarded with different tech solutions, etc. However, there's often ones that do make it through and you see real value in, but for us to progress that internally, we have an AI council that I'm sure a lot of you have something similar, that meets once a month, and it's up to you as the individual. If you see value in something, it's presented to that council, and that council is ultimately the one that go ahead, because if you're going after loads of things at once, nothing's going to have traction across the whole business. So really refunnel everything into that one council to make that final decision for it. And that's a representative council. It's not a level thing. It's just making sure that it's represented across the business from a marketing, a D&T perspective, and whatever function that tool relates to.
Right, Emma.
Yeah, no, probably quite similar, to be honest, in terms of like the councils that we have. I think the struggle that we tend to have at Gousto is, can we build it in-house or do we need to outsource it? So as I mentioned, we're very lucky. We invested really heavily into data, tech and product teams quite early on when we built Gousto, and then now that we're kind of focusing more on that marketing and growth side now, so we do have the foundations there, but I think that's always been the battle of like whether we can build it within our in-house teams or outsourcing. And I think what's made the difference in terms of outsourcing is like, what can that do for our teams especially? So can it free up their time to work on more of these kind of strategic big wins versus them being bogged down with creating like a new kind of like loyalty program or something like that within a tech? So yeah, that's mostly been like our struggles within Gousto, I think.
I think for us, we've spent quite a bit of time on how do we put the right people together to come to a collective view instead of having a tech view and then a business view. So just making sure we've got the right interfaces into the technology team. So if we're looking at future MarTech, we're doing it with the business needs in mind. And I think what was happening previously is you had a team in technology sort of going off doing some of the thinking without that sort of needs being highlighted from the business. So the two were never meeting. The MarTech teams were thinking, actually, they should be deploying other stuff, and the business teams are just going, give me the basics. We haven't even got the basics. So we're doing a lot more work on put the right people in the room, and that's the way you come up with a combined solution of the business need and then the future tech. So
yeah, great.
All about the people, basically, putting the right people together.
Perfect. I think we've got time for one more question. So have we got one more question? Yes, so there's a lady at the back there.
Really enjoyed this. Thank you so much, everyone. Emma, I think you mentioned a little bit about using more qual data. So obviously one of the big challenges we have across that is it's expensive, it's hard to manage, it's hard to kind of aggregate rather than kind of more statistical data, which is really easy to manage, right? Have you guys ever thought about doing things around synthetic personalities, synthetic personas to try and make that process of gathering kind of more behavioral data quicker, easier, more effective? Or is that something that's a bit too future, something to think about in the future?
Yeah, I think, sorry, I didn't really hear all of it. Does anyone?
I guess in terms of the use, at the moment you're doing a lot to kind of model customer profiles based on existing insight and data, and really looking at the use of synthetic data and the role that could play to improve efficiencies. Is that?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for the question. I think for us, really, it's about collecting first-party, zero-party, and behavioural data. So I think they're all integral to what we do at Gousto. Along the way, we're always having kind of data modelling to be able to action our insights in real time as well. So we're trying to be proactive and not reactive. I think the big step, I mentioned it earlier, is around collecting as much zero-party data as possible. So what can you collect from your customers in terms of feedback, in terms of ratings, in terms of how they interact with the product, how they interact with comms or the menu especially, has been like a really big shift. And I think with kind of new policies coming through, like with cookies, for example, and kind of more GDPR guidelines, I think focusing on zero-party data and really collecting that from customers, like not needing like these big algorithms, even though that's been a massive bonus for us, it's really kind of listening to the customers at the core that's really helped us on that transformation.
Right. Anything to add? Synthetic data and how you're using that?
I would just say we do heavily rely on lookalike audiences, especially with GDPR, etc. So it's very important. It's very important for our business, and any provider that can help us build that out more, we're all ears.
Right. I think we've got 2 minutes. So actually, if we've got a really quick question, anyone got a quick fire question to round us up? No? Just want to make sure no one's missing out. Well, in that case, I will thank our amazing panelists. Thank you so much. That was really insightful. So please join me in thanking them.
Thanks, Rachel.
And thank you all for turning out.
Thank you.
First session of the day, so appreciate everyone turning out for it.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks,
Great.
everyone.
Great.